Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to look at the revolutionary new Peak Design travel tripod, which is a completely reimagined approach to the space of a tripod and how much it takes up. I'll be comparing it a little bit to what I've been using as a travel tripod, which is a very compact, also carbon fiber tripod from Abbott. I did a review on it at some point several years ago. But as you can see, even in terms of the basic space, there is a huge difference in the amount of space that this takes up as opposed to what this takes up, even though this is capable of supporting a load of over twice as much as this. Now, first of all, let's jump in and let's take a closer look at some of the basic design and what's there and how some of the bits work as a part of that. Then we'll explore actually using it here out in the real world. Let's look at a few key details of the Peak Design travel tripod. So first of all, your outer case that it comes in is kind of a hard shell case. It's got a strap here, and that helps to keep some compression on there. That's really more just of a travel case for it if you're wanting to store it in that kind of fashion. What it does have inside is a slightly padded case that has some stretch to it and the similar kind of material to a lot of their bags. It has some of these attach points, and so you could actually affix it inside, say, the travel backpack. And it's also got some handle areas here and also places where you might be able to slip through on a strap on either top or bottom and let it mount that way. So you've got a lot of different mounting approaches, and here you've got just a kind of a tensioner at the top that allows you to access the tripod itself. So in this segment here, what I want to do is to focus on the actual basic tripod head and some of the features of the center column here. And so first of all, as far as the tension knob, there's a tension knob here, and one nice feature is it pops out to give you easier access to it, and so that's where you can tighten it down, and so where you can put a lot of pressure on it. Now they've kind of reinvented the approach to the tripod head here. So out of the box, it actually ships with their standard plate, and that plate can be used in things like very popular capture camera clips. I also often have one mounted on the bottom of a camera because it's also can work in our Arca Swiss. It's that right circumference, and so you can attach it there. As you can see, I also use these attached with their anchors, and so you can easily go to one of their straps. Now, out of the box, it actually has two posts here, and so that's just adding extra kind of restrictions for holding that in place, security. Now, I kind of like to, and so then you can use this locking mechanism, and so you can make sure that there's no way that that can come free. And so, a really nice secure point there. Now, I've actually removed those 2 points because then it allows it to be Arca Swiss compatible, and so I can use some of these accessories that can lock that into place. And so let's just, for example, let's lock the actual head there, and that way I can use things like in this case I've got a grip on this Fuji X-T3, and so it is Arca Swiss compatible, and so that will allow me to then use something like that on there. But this is going to be your standard plate that you're going to apply if you're just using other type devices. So there's one locking ring, and that's to lock the quick release plate from moving. Then also there is another locking ring here that will, if it's unlocked, it allows you to move the ball head around, and then you can apply tension to that and lock it in any position. Now, for me, kind of the torture test that has been in the past for other tripods is a combination like this. Reason for that, this is the Tamron 15 to 30 millimeter f2.8, and then mounted on it, I have got the Photodiox Pro Wonder Pana square filter system, and so this is the kind of kind of lens that does not take standard filters, and so you have to use an aftermarket filter system. So the key issue is, let's say that I'm shooting in a vertical position like this, and so the issue I've had with some tripods is that when I lock down, a lot of times the weak link is actually in their own quick release plate, but the weight of this assembly which is not light. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff here. It will cause that to start to sink down. So one thing in terms of evaluating the strength of this head, which has around a 20-pound load, so that doesn't always tell the full story. But in this case, I'm able to lock it into a variety of positions, even a difficult one where there is instinct for that to move, and it's holding its position just fine. And so kudos to them in this redesign that they've actually designed a very functional and secure system for attaching onto your camera there. And so with this, if you'll pull that out and you'll release that, you can actually make it sink down to where it takes up very, very little space at the top of this. Now let's flip this over and let's take a look at another really very clever feature. So down here at the bottom, there's a little locking mechanism, and if you pull that, it allows you to rotate off the end thing. Inside here, you'll find this little piece, and if you take a closer look, what it is that it is something that will allow you to clip in, and then once that's locked in place, you can attach a cell phone to it, and so right built into it you have a mounting system to put a cell phone, like for video or something like that. And so this is kind of the next degree of engineering of anything that I've seen on a tripod before, and the fact that that's always hidden in there, kind of spring loaded into the center column, is a pretty cool thing. So with that center column area, you can easily remove the center column. You could then mount it from underneath if you wanted to, shoot in positions where you're shooting from down low. But then anywhere along here, you can lock it. You can lock that into place, and so it can be secure for shooting in a low down position like that. Now, one final option you have is that if you take the tripod center column out, you put the head to the side and rotate it over, there's a place on the ball head where you can actually access with a hex screw, where you can actually access a hex in there, which if you screw it out will release. And so this bottom portion, and so you can take the shaft out, you can then put it back in and then shoot at extremely low position. You can drop down your shooting position to somewhere around 5 inches is where it actually works out. And so you can shoot from very low positions, which again further helps with the flexibility. Now, unfortunately, that's not a toolless operation. It does require you to use an included hex key that comes with that, with the actual tripod, but it is yet another option for setting it up. So the Oben travel tripod that I've been using, it works kind of in a similar design. It's a little bit more reliant on getting height out of the center column. It's got some fairly spindly little legs by comparison that, down here at the bottom are, fairly small, which is why it has a fairly modest load weight of around 9 pounds is what it recommends. You can see that, it could be a little bit more stable when it comes to that, particularly if you're going to pop some major weight onto it, like this. Now this, of course, is within the stated limit, but as you can see, it's about as much as what it's able to take. And here we've got a little bit of wind. It's, it's not as stable maybe as what I would like. By contrast, for one thing, the whole design of this makes it very easy to, in fact, let me just step back and redo that, because you can do it that fashion. You can also do it in the fashion where you just, I haven't quite mastered getting all of them at the same time, but you certainly have the ability of just sliding them all out simultaneously. Very firm locks that are much more stable than that. And instead of having to wind them, in this case, it's just one mechanism, so it's just pulling it out and then locking it. And so setup is definitely faster, and of course all of that will improve depending on how much time you spend in actually, learning it. So as you can see, first of all, our height before we extend the center column is basically right up at the height of my other travel tripod. And so here we have the advantage of obviously a much wider base by comparison, thus a much more stable platform. And then if you need to, you can bring it up, and obviously you can get a significantly, almost a foot, about 10 inches of additional height by comparison with a more stable platform. Now, as I showed you a moment ago, one nice thing is that if you're using, like say this Peak Design strap or any strap that's actually attached onto a plate, then you can very quickly move to the, and just lock that into place. And then if you want to double lock. But now in this case, we've got a more stable platform, and obviously, particularly with something like this, that in this case, a lot of times I could be shooting it with it down without that, more shaky center column. Let me just tighten all that up, and that way I've got a much more stable type platform for the whole thing. And so, as you can see, in terms of the versatility, you get a pretty functional tripod that will support a 20-pound payload while only weighing itself. In the carbon fiber version, it weighs at about 2.7, 2.8 pounds. I think somewhere around 3.25 to 3.5 for the aluminum version. And so, but at the same time, in terms of the basic functionality, this is kind of head and shoulders ahead of what I've been using. And in terms of stability, if I'm wanting to get to the place where I'm avoiding the instability of that, smaller center column, I'm down at, for me, less than waist height. And so on this, whereas here I'm up at almost chest height here. And so obviously a much more functional, even though it compacts down into what is arguably actually a smaller payload size. And so obviously a pretty cool thing. And then, once you've got it locked back down there in place, the whole nature of repacking it down is a very straightforward, just a few seconds of packing it up, having it ready to go. Now, instead of being round, they've redesigned the whole idea of this kind of to building on strength and stability. And so what you've got is actually what are kind of beveled, it's almost a diamond type shape to some extent. And so that allows there to be more strength and stability as a part of that. But the biggest thing is that nature allows it to, compact into something that I can almost make my fingers touch around here. That's how thin around that it is. And so there's no question that this is extremely well designed. And I know that a lot of the criticisms that I have seen, even from some of you, is the fact that it's extremely expensive. I completely agree. I mean, it is very, very expensive. At Kickstarter, I think you're about $479 for the carbon fiber version and around $289, I believe, for the aluminum version. And so it is extremely expensive. There's no question about that. But the criticisms that I've heard from some people about it not being stable enough to be a serious tripod, I mean, obviously all of that's relative. If you're talking about mounting super tellies on there and, trying to set up an assembly where, you can replace this head and you could, put a big like Wembley type system. I don't think that that's what this tripod is designed for, but I will say that it compares very favorably to my ordinary carbon fiber, not even the travel, but compares very favorably to my ordinary travel or just tripods in general, carbon fiber tripods. And so, as far as the function, whether it's worth the money, that really comes down to you. I mean, it is, it's highly functional, it's beautifully designed, and there are some genuinely innovative things here in a field that hasn't seen a lot of genuine innovation, but ultimately the price comes down to you. A few of my other kind of minor criticisms that I will point out is that, for one thing, the actual quick release plate that they use for it, it's not truly toolless. If you learn how to manipulate it, you can tighten it down without using a tool, but it really is reliant on a hex key. And so that's one factor. The other factor is that if you're using something standard Arca Swiss, like the L plates on some of my cameras, I do find that it's a pretty tight fit in there, and so I don't find it as smooth as mounting and unmounting as some of my other tripods are. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for something to carry along that you can throw into a travel bag, or if you can throw into your camera backpack, it's really hard to argue against how functional this is. So you'll have to decide for yourself whether or not that additional functionality is worth the extra money. I'm Dustin Abbott. If you look in the description down below, I do have linkage to where you can jump on board with the Kickstarter right now. It's definitely going into production. They were looking for a Kickstarter support of under $1 million, and they're well over $6 million in terms of sponsorship. And so it's definitely going into production. If you'd like to get one, getting your order in now will mean that you get it maybe before Christmas. And so I would take a look at that. There's also the typical links there if you'd like to follow me on social media or become a patron, sign up for my newsletter. And if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.